So, is it anxiety, ADHD, or burnout? Understanding the nervous system's role in all of those challenges. Welcome back to another episode of the Movement, Mind, and Meaning podcast. I'm your host, Megan Nolan, and today I'm very excited to have a special guest with me all the way from the UK, Jenny Adams, who is a somatic and ADHD coach. Welcome to the show, Jenny.
Thank you for having me on, and thank you for accommodating such a big time difference as well. I mean, we've navigated 10 hours, so yay us.
Yay. Yes, I know, right? Isn't that the magic of the interwebs that we can just be together hanging out virtually all the way from the UK where Jenny's at and from Maui where I live. And so coming at you wherever you are in the world. Hi, good to have you here listening or watching, whether you're on the podcast or YouTube. So Jenny, we like to just get right down into the good stuff on this podcast. And of course, everyone can read your beautiful bio in the show notes. So we want to get to know you, though. So will you take us to a moment in time or a part of your journey where you went through something that maybe shifted things for you? Maybe it led to a realization to get to the point in what you're doing now, how you're sharing your gifts with the world.
Yeah, so I think for me, one of my biggest shifts was probably 2017 when I would have been, I think I was 26 then, and I had been reliant on a wheelchair or a mobility scooter for 2 or 3 years. I'm in my mid-20s and I am just like, this is not life. And that was one of the pivotal points for me to actually start looking inwards and looking at my own stuff. And rather than relying so much on doctors and what I've been told that I can and can't do, I started looking inwards and looking at, okay, what am I in control of? And how can I help myself get out of this place? And spoiler alert, I did. So the reason I was in that wheelchair for me was due to undiagnosed ADHD, unsupported ADHD, which burnt me out and burnt me out hard, which then turned into a chronic illness, which then led to being reliant on this wheelchair and scooter for years. And I've unpicked a lot of that stuff and kind of peeled back all these layers and finally found safety within myself. And if you or anyone listening has been through trauma, whether you recognize it or not, anxiety, depression, that weighs heavy on us. And there's layers to unpick, but it doesn't mean it's stuff that you need to let control your life forever.
Absolutely. Wow. Well, thank you for that beautiful share. And I know that sounds like, wow, that was a really intense time, but look at the revelations and realizations that it led you to, right? And so that's something we really speak to here in this community is we take a perspective, or at least we attempt to, and sometimes it happens during and sometimes it happens way later, that everything is a gift or an opportunity. And you clearly have made this into both. So I just send you so much love and so much joy and celebration for that part of your journey. And so that really leads into a lot of questions that I have, but we'll start with one. I know that for many people, like I was really legitimately convinced that I was on the neurodivergent spectrum, that, I must have some sort of flavor and variety of ADHD or ADD. And I went to get diagnosed and she said, no, I'd say it's probably high functioning anxiety. And I said, okay, well, can we explain all these other things? No, it's probably just that. Okay. So in your experience, why do you think that that happens for so many women, this sort of crossover confusion between anxiety and depression and ADHD or ADD, this kind of conundrum that many of us find ourselves in?
Mm. I think firstly, we kind of need to address how much in our Western society we pathologicalize, is that even a word? Pathologize so much of our health and our mental health. And the medical world looks at how do people fit into a box? And if you have these list of symptoms, do you fit into that box? No, well, let's try this one. And I think that crossover can come because not many people are looking at us as a human being. And there, as you said, there are flavors of neurodiversity. And, you know, it is a spectrum. So for some of us, you know, we may end up very textbook. And I think for a lot of men and boys, the typical ADHD symptoms are a lot more outward presenting. Whereas for a lot of girls and women, there's a lot more internalizing, and that can be due partly to hormones and also just to our conditioning. So there's so much of this that from a very young age that we're picking up on from the world, we're observing. We're often highly sensitive people, and we are internalizing, there's something wrong with me. And when we, yeah, I can see that. That's a that's a tough one, right? And when we've spent our whole life with that belief, it's fucking hard. It's hard to live like that. So what do? We come up with coping strategies. We blame ourselves. We hold this stuff in, and then we look at, okay, well, what can I control? What am I able to do? Can I, oh, can I plan ahead and do this thing and make sure I'm adapting my behaviors to fit into this world, as opposed to maybe asking for what our needs are? And I think this is where the anxiety and the neurospiciness can cross over, and we go to often a medical, you know, a Western medical doctor, and they will go, ah, it's anxiety. Here's some pills, or this is what you need to do. And more we are speaking about how ADHD, especially specifically, is being diagnosed and recognized in a lot more millennial women, older, you know, 30 plus women now, because it just hasn't been recognized. We've been looking at the male model for years and years. So there's all these anxious women that are probably anxious because they're trying to function in a world that doesn't support them.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's such an interesting conundrum, and I love that you make up words as well. So welcome to the party. Um, and I saw, and thank you for witnessing me in that, and that's something very likely that many of this people in this community can relate to as well, is that feeling of confusion and self-doubt and wondering, is there something wrong with me? I can't figure this out. This seems to be this lingering issue, right? And seeking solutions is a normal thing. And of course, we want to have clarity, we want to have understanding. And the challenge is that when we're not looked at as a full being from the full spectrum of all that we are, the many petals to the flower that is the experience that is you, then it's really easy to get put in a box, and we get in the box and we're like, no, this doesn't fit. I'm not supposed to be in this box, you know, and then we have this sort of, okay, well, I'm going to try to sort this out and, you know, find another solution. And so, yeah, it was really interesting to me because that was it. Like we had about an hour together and she's like, okay, so these are the 3 medications I would recommend. And I was like, oh, okay. And I'm not adverse to medications by any means. I think there's a time and a place, and they're extremely supportive and 1,000% in part of the conversation, at least in this community. But there's so many directions that we want to look in to support us as a full system, each and every one of us from a full systemic perspective. And so that's so interesting. So it kind of answered that question of, you know, why does this tend to happen so much later in life? Because we've developed these internalized coping strategies. And something that you alluded to but didn't mention, but maybe can now, is that from what I understand, a lot of the ADHD research had been done exclusively on men and younger men, like boys or whatever age range, but very minimally done on women because of the cyclical nature of our hormones. So it affected the information that was garnered from the research. Is that what you're understanding as well?
I think more is being done more recently, but I think going back a couple of decades, a lot of it, yeah, well, a lot of research in general, unfortunately, has been done on men and boys, and just saying, oh, okay, well, women are just small men, right? No, no. So yes, there is a lot more research needed, but things like the crossovers between neurodiversity and things like hypermobility and being a highly sensitive person and giftedness and the sensitive nervous system and MCAS and FOTS and like all these things, like there is a link. And again, when we're pulling all of this out and put it into boxes as opposed to looking at this as a collective, then we're kind of missing things, and people are left confused and unsupported a lot of the time. But there is support, there is hope out there. And also looking at things like how PMDD, which is I think, actually I'm not going to give a quote because I'll probably get the statistic wrong, but it's a lot more prevalent in neurodivergent women having PMDD because we're looking at hormone fluctuations.
Can you explain what that acronym stands for people that aren't aware?
So PMDD, I think stands for premenstrual dysphoric disorder. Essentially, it's a form of extreme PMS, but it's in the luteal phase, the up to 2 weeks before your bleed, where your progesterone is lower. I think I'm not a hormone expert, um, but essentially that luteal phase can be really difficult for some women with ADHD, and that's when the anxiety can really spike. And the dysregulation of our nervous system can feel a lot more, we're essentially a lot more sensitive in that time. And if we're not aware of this and we're not tracking our cycles and we're not aware of our nervous system, we can think we're just going crazy for a couple of weeks, a month, if we're not linking it to what's going on. And some months can be better than others. But again, if you're going to the doctor in that period saying, I'm losing my mind, and they're like, oh, it's anxiety. Well, is it? Has anyone looked at your hormones? Has anyone looked at your sensitivities? Are you neurodivergent? Maybe these things are interlinked, and there can be some things done to help with that.
Okay. Yeah, so many things to consider. I think it is really beautiful to look at this, and especially as women, right? Predominantly, I support women and those that identify as women, and so it's such an important factor. And so it is, again, this mysterious thing, right? The human body is such a fascinating subject and so intricate that we're just even more garnishing more information and understanding about. And so it has so much to teach us, right? So much to teach us if we're willing to pay attention, if we're able to quiet the noisy chatter of the collective of squawking seagulls in our brain and really listen to those subtle messages that our body is giving us. And so let's talk about that a little bit more, because your story, oh my goodness, like what you spoke to of ending up in a wheelchair for a long period of time, what happened before that? Like, what do you feel like you maybe were some signals that you missed out on, and sometimes it might be someone's missing out on them, or they may be blatant symptoms or signals that just get louder and louder and louder. And we're so in our head and so in the coping strategies of more work, do, go, I got to do these things, that we miss those subtle signals. So can you speak to that about what happens when, maybe what they are, first of all, for many people, and then what can happen in our bodies when we skip out on them and ignore them?
Yeah, so first thing I want to say here is just, especially for anyone who is neurodivergent and listening to this, our goal in life is not to quiet our brain. Like, there is nothing wrong with us if our minds are making noise. That is their job. They are there to just talk at us. Our thoughts are not necessarily reality, in fact. But I think a lot of us, especially if we try and go into things like meditation, can struggle because we're like, we need to quiet all the noise. And then we go into this shame spiral of, but I can't because it's so loud and there's all these things. And what am I having for dinner? Oh, I forgot that thing. And off we go. And it's kind of giving us a step back and noticing, oh, okay, actually, today I feel really all over the place. There's a lot going on in my head. Maybe I need to do a brain dump. Maybe this is telling me something. Maybe I'm feeling a bit more anxious. I need to regulate. And when we have that noisy brain, we can also give it something to do sometimes. So going back to the body, things like body scans, as opposed to just sitting in silence, can give that busy brain a bit of an anchor to focus on. And then we can come into stillness a little bit more easily, as opposed to, I just can't meditate because I've got ADHD, which is probably the belief for a lot of us. And then going back to your question about the signals beforehand and what happened before I ended up in a wheelchair. And there were definitely a lot of little nudges that my body was telling me. And I had grown up conditioned in a way that, you don't listen to that. Like if I was not very well when I was younger, oh, Mum, I've got a tummy ache. I don't want to go to school. No, you're going to school. And just those sorts of things, like, and it's not just my mum, it was society in general. Don't listen to your body. School is more important. Work is more important. You need to be productive. That is more important than what your body is trying to tell you. So there were these little somatic nudges of things like tummy aches and like digestive issues from a very young age, sensitivities. I had horrific eczema when I was a child. Like I was hospitalized, I covered from the neck down. I realise now I've quite a severe dairy intolerance, so I don't have dairy and don't really get any issues with eczema. So there's these little things that have been going on that looking back now, I'm like, yeah, why did no one see this? Why has no one looked at this as a big picture and maybe tried some stuff? But we live and learn. It's part of the journey. It's made me stronger. So some of the little nudges before I got ill, there was trauma. Unfortunately, my dad passed away when I was 13. I was then conditioned in this world that didn't understand me. I got bullied in school, abusive relationships in my teens. So there's a fair bit of trauma there and shrinking of myself and not being able to show up and speak my needs. So my body was also interpreting that as you're not important. So it was then having to get louder and louder and louder to try and get my attention to get some of those needs spoken. So I'd get colds and I'd like catch viruses and things a lot. I remember I caught glandular fever. I think you guys call it mono, Epstein-Barr virus when I was 15. And after that, I just never felt right. Like my whole body ached all the time and I was just always exhausted. So I'd kind of get through school or college and then I'd go and do like a Saturday job and I'd come home and I would feel like I'd been thrown down the stairs like multiple times. But I was just hearing, oh, well, all of the adults are just always complaining that they're tired and things ache. So is this what growing up is? And I never questioned, why is my body hurting so much when I'm 17, 18, early 20s? And then it progressively got worse and worse and worse because I wasn't listening to those little nudges. The colds would get longer and worse. And I'd end up getting sick from kind of September, October to March, April, just the whole of winter. I just couldn't shake a cold. Allergies would be worse. I had nut allergy symptoms and I've been in anaphylactic shock at this time. And I realize now some of that is the MCAS, which is mast cell activation syndrome, which is your mast cells going on overdrive basically and overreacting to everything. And yeah, there was just lots of these little things. And when I was noticing that I was getting tired from work or from life in general, I just wouldn't stop. I'd just keep going. And I remember being so ridiculous. I say this with compassion, that on the weekend I'd be exhausted, but I could not sit still. I could not be bored. I could not be with any of those feelings or even let them come near me. So I would be baking brownies, I'd be making a Sunday roast, and I'd be outside cleaning my car all at the same time whilst being absolutely exhausted. And then I look back and I wonder, oh, no wonder my body just broke one day and just stopped me in my tracks and was like, no, that's enough. Because I wasn't listening.
Ooh, my goodness. Yeah, that's the thing, right? Is, there's a saying, somebody brilliant said something to the effect of, if we don't listen to the whispers, we will be forced to listen to the screams.
Oh,
And the
yes.
thing is that some of us, continue forward, adapting and pushing and driving until we get to that breaking point, right? And so our goal is to empower you with this information so that you never get anywhere close to that. But the reality is that sometimes we're so deep in it that we don't even notice, right? And these
Yeah.
are protective patterns that are hardwired in, that are trauma responses, that are survival mechanisms, right? And they're just what we do and how we do it. But we get to a point where we don't have the capacity for it anymore. And the system of the body just gets overloaded clearly. And that's where practicing compassionate curiosity, non-judgmental self-awareness as a practice is so beautiful, so that we get nowhere near that, right? Eventually. And I know Jenny shares that and wants that for you too. And so it's an interesting piece to consider, is that over the course of our humanity, you know, collectively and individually, we all go through stuff, right? We all go through things that impact us. And they might be little T moments, hopefully, or they might be big, intense, traumatic moments. And most of us have a collection of that. And so it's really important for us to be really compassionate. And you spoke to that there. And thank you for sharing that and witnessing you in that as well. And so it's important for us to look through that lens of awareness of this, you know, and maybe people are familiar with this, maybe you're trauma informed yourself, is that we're looking through this as the lens of compassionate curiosity and looking at how things impact us and what they can be trying to teach us and show us and to help us learn and grow. So from your perspective, what, from the trauma informed perspective, really, what and where do anxiety and depression emanate from, come from, or maybe caused by, and what is the role in our nervous system regulation, but also in awareness of it, of both of those challenges that many people in this community are navigating?
Yeah, great question. And I think, so I've trained with Gabor Mate in compassionate inquiry. So I know he can be quite diversive, but yeah, I really vibe with his stuff. And from what I've learned from him, he has said that anxiety, well, whether this is said from him, I'm not sure. This is something I picked up along the way. Anxiety is about projecting forward and needing to control what's going on in the future because we don't feel safe in our bodies. And I'll talk more about the nervous system in a moment. And then depression is a pushing down. I mean, what is the word? Depress. You depress a pedal, you depress something, you push it down. So what is it you're pushing down? And if you think of like a beach ball, pushing it underwater, if you're depressing that beach ball, what happens when you let go of that? That's a lot of energy, yep, that wants to come up and out. And for anyone watching, I've got one of those giant Swiss balls behind me. Imagine keeping that pushed down. So how much energy does that take? Because depression, what are some of the symptoms? Fatigue, we're exhausted, can't sleep, don't want to do anything. If you're spending your whole life holding this beach ball underwater, it's exhausting. You're not going to want to do anything because everything is pushing this thing down. So what is that beach ball? What is it you're having to be pushing down? Is that linked to maybe you not feeling like you can be authentic? Because if we go back to what happened in our childhood and look at this through a trauma-informed lens, we have two choices when we're children, unconsciously. We can attach or we can be authentic. And when we're a baby and when we're very young, and attachment is literally our only form of survival, we always will choose the attachment. And if that then means we have to depress and suppress some of our authenticity, and then we learn these coping strategies and we believe I'm not enough as I am. I need to be the good girl, the perfectionist, the whatever in order to be accepted because we always go for that attachment. So especially for a lot of women, we will very much be the people pleasers and the perfectionists because we are looking for that attachment. And that is that child part of us that is coming up as adults. And that can look like depression and we're holding all that stuff down. And that can also look like anxiety in wanting and needing to control the outcome. You know, everything has to be perfect because I can't possibly, people won't love me. I am not accepted in this environment if I don't get this right. And that can sound quite extreme, but if you go back to our survival caveman roots, we would literally, if we are excluded from our tribe, we die. And coming into the nervous system then, that can feel predominantly unsafe. We are then switching into our survival state. Those coping strategies are coming up. And where this can then turn into things like burnout is because when we're in that state for a chronic time, especially our sympathetic and our dorsal state, the fight, flight, and the freeze, they're fantastic for surviving something, yeah, for a short time. Chronically, they drain our energy. So we get adrenal fatigue. It does all sorts of stuff to our hormones. It can change our DNA, change our cell. It does all this stuff within our body. So this is where the nervous system is so important, because if you think of the nervous system like a bucket, and there's only so much stress that we can hold in that bucket. So day-to-day stresses happen. They can be things like an email from your boss. They can be things like witnessing a car accident, like all sorts of stuff. They go into that bucket. Yeah, I'm just seeing something here. So
Oh yeah, no, I honor that, because thank you for witnessing me, because that's it, right? And I know you have more to share, and but I noticed you witnessing me in that, and so many people in this community were sensitive, and we tend to underestimate, like, I saw all this stuff, or even like, let's take a very real, very daily example for so many people, social media. And you're seeing
mhm,
atrocities, and you're seeing stuff that you're like, what in the actual fuck is happening right now? And you're taking that in, whether you know that or not. You can feel that in your body. That's all going in the bucket. So thank you for bringing that up.
mhm,
Back to you, back to the
mhm.
bucket.
And I just also want to say, like, for me personally, I don't believe so much in trigger warnings. Don't go looking for nasty shit. But also, it's being healing is really being in these sorts of spaces where we can see something and we can hold that space to go, there's something here. Let's just allow this to be here for a moment. I'm witnessing you. You know, whatever's here, this is safe to come out if it wants to come out, as opposed to swallow it down. I'm fine. Yeah, yeah, I'm good. How are you? And this is
Right?
something I
And your voice just totally changed there. And it's like, no, you're not. And we can all tell.
exactly.
But like, we're like trying to put on this, the masking and the fake it till I make it, and we're just like stuffing it all down. And yeah, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. And it's not, right? We call that in this community the worn out woman, that, caffeinated hamster on the, just constantly going, going, going. I'm fine,
I'm
I'm fine.
fine.
No, you're not. You're squeaking. Like your voice is squeaking right now. And it
Yeah.
made me feel like you're pulling the wool over our eyes, but no, you can't fake your frequency. You can't fake your inner state. Shines through and radiates out of you, right? And it's undeniable in any direction. So thank you. And so sorry for jumping in, but yes, continue.
Well, this is probably more important than whatever I was saying anyway. But
Well, it's supporting you in that too, is right, is that state of the nervous system, and how it's so important to weave these little moments and community and witnessing, and that's it, is our work you do clearly so well, is giving space for these things, and not suppressing and repressing and pushing them away, and denying their presence, because it's part of us that's asking to be witnessed, it's asking to be seen. And so these coping strategies, at one point were very effective for our survival, right? And so they're not necessarily going to get us to where we want to go. And they're not hardwired, right? That's the beautiful thing, is that we have the opportunity and the ability to shift this through these different tools and learning and being in community like this. And so thank you. And so actually, this is kind of the perfect segue. So let's go to the point in our episode where we take a little power pause, and Jenny's going to walk us through. And so we're going to do a hands-on energy reset, and Jenny's going to lead us through that. So would you like to do that for us, please?
yes, of course. So for anyone watching or listening, this is a wonderful regulation tool that you can use. So let's go down our left side. So we're going to find our collarbone, and we're just going to gently tap along the edge of your collarbone. And as you're doing this, just starting to bring a little bit of awareness to maybe your fingers tapping your collarbone and to your collarbone being tapped. And then we're going to bring that into the shoulder and taking that down the arm. And you can do this with fists, you can do this with fingertips, palms, whatever feels okay for you. And at a pressure that is okay. And if you imagine maybe you've got paint on your hand and you're trying to cover your whole arm, your whole hand in paint, and you can imagine whatever color that is. So we're giving the whole arm a good tap. You get into the armpit as well if you want to. And then we're going to brush from the top of the shoulder. You can do this from your ear and your neck if you want. You can brush down your arm. And if you're standing, you can always just let your arm just get floppy, let it hang. So you're brushing from your ear, sweeping down across your arm. And if you're holding any anxiety or tension, imagine stuff that you're brushing off. And then you can give that arm a shake. So whatever feels good, whatever direction, just giving it a shake and a wiggle, shaking any stuff off. And then just coming back to whatever feels like a rest and checking in and just noticing what you're aware of in that left arm compared to your right. So for anyone that maybe doesn't find connecting to their body that easily, are you noticing a difference? Whether you have words for it or not, is there maybe a tingliness, a more aliveness? Does your shoulder feel a little bit softer? Is there less tension there? So I'd invite you to do the same on the right side, just to even yourself up. So if we've got time, we can do just tapping across the right collarbone now, taking that down the arm, giving that all a tap. And the reason that we are comparing is to just give ourselves a little opportunity to see, did that work? Did that do something? Am I aware of something being here? So as we tap, and then we're going to sweep from the ear, again, brushing anything off and getting into your whole arm, giving it a little wiggle as you do so, and then just giving that arm a little shake. Forwards, backwards, out to the side, whatever feels okay. And then when you have finished that, again, coming back to center and noticing, what am I aware of? Is there maybe a bit more aliveness? Have your shoulders dropped? So yeah, Megan, I'd love to hear from you. What is it you're aware of? What was that like for you?
Well, I was like, we're doing the other side too. We are making time and space for this.
Yeah,
I'm not
can't
gonna
even
sit here
even.
all lopsided and and I appreciate you checking in with that. And I love the pause in between, because so many people in this community are really highly sensitive and very intelligent and very, we want to know. I want to know that this is actually doing something. And so I love
Mm-hmm.
that moment to pause. And so for me, there was a clear difference. And I love the ease and the spaciousness that comes into the arms, and then it ripples into the whole body. And so thank you for that. And so what you just experienced, if you're watching this, catching this just over on YouTube as a standalone video of this beautiful energy reset, is actually part of a full episode of the Movement, Mind, and Meaning podcast, where Jenny and I are diving into all things nervous system and how it impacts ADHD, anxiety, and burnout. So make sure to check out the whole episode, and Jenny has so much more magical stuff to share. So you're going to definitely want to watch that whole video. So, and actually leads us to a really great opportunity. So I know that you have a lot of magical things to share. I know you have incredible things coming up. And in fact, you are doing a workshop really soon. So, actually, it might be in the past if you happen to be catching this later. So let's speak to that as well. But tell us a little more about your upcoming March workshop, please.
Yes, so on the 5th of March, I am going to be speaking and teaching people about how to shift from being an overwhelmed ADHD entrepreneur that is, you've started your values-driven business that you absolutely love. You want this dream life where you can travel or maybe just get home to spend time with your kids and cook dinner. And what you're actually doing is spending all day feeling overwhelmed, jumping from thing to thing, struggling with focus. So I'm going to be supporting people in a free workshop to learn the first few steps of how to maybe shift some things around so you can get better focus. You can easily shift out of overwhelm, and you're starting to prioritize what's actually important to you and putting that first so that you are then able to live the life you want and let the business look after you and what's important to you first, not the other way around. So it's on the 5th of March. It's going to be 1 p.m. GMT, which is 8 a.m. Eastern. So it's probably the middle of the night for you in Maui. There will be a replay available for about a week. But if you hop over onto my socials or my website, which I'm sure you'll link below, or it's at Jenny Adams Coach, then keep an eye on everything and you'll see what's going on with me and how I can support you as well.
Oh, I love that. Perfect. Well, thank you for sharing all of that. And absolutely will be linked up in the show notes as well as the description of the videos. And thank you for accommodating the fact that it might be the middle of the night for some people. So real thing with these internets. It's amazing. But yes, time zones are a real thing. And so I really love that you speak specifically to the entrepreneur that has these challenges. And so would, if somebody isn't necessarily a business owner, would this tool set still be applicable for them as well? But if they're navigating those other challenges you mentioned?
Yeah, so the reason I have it kind of pitched to entrepreneurs is because generally they are people that are extremely passionate about what they do, and they've also got some a bit of flexibility over how they're spending their time. So if you're someone that has some flexibility over your schedule, your time, and you're aligning with, the overwhelm, the burnout, drop me a message, come along to the workshop anyway, and I can definitely support you in some way. So yeah,
Okay.
just
Okay.
yeah,
Perfect.
let me know.
Yeah, good, 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 good. Yeah, and I mean, the prevalence of ADHD and ADD are really interestingly high in the entrepreneur community. So
Exactly,
chances
exactly.
are.
We don't fit into these square pegs, so we go and do our own thing. So
Right. And maybe you're still in corporate or still in a job and you have a little side hustle you've been thinking about or you like a little thing you're working on. So yes, you've got that entrepreneurial spirit a brewing inside of you. So yes, definitely come and check out the workshop. And so as we finish up, is there anything that you feel would, as one little glorious nugget that they could take away? Anything that you would like to finish with?
yes, I think just going back to that moment that you've had and giving and the space for that moment, this is what regulation is about. It's not necessarily just about tools and shaking and coming into our body and yeah, all of these tools, they're also giving ourselves the pause to just check in. Am I okay? Do I need anything? Because when we're looking at that stress bucket, that potentially was a stressor that is now not going into that bucket to get to overflow, because that was an opportunity for a spoonful of that liquid to be taken out of that bucket as opposed to more added in, because there was space given, there was regulation. So it's not always just about the tools. They can be great. So if this is feeling overwhelming for anyone, oh my God, where do I start? I need to learn all these things. Finding a pause. Literally one breath. Are my feet on the ground? How am I in this moment? Just stopping to ask yourself that is a very simple and probably the best place to start.
Well, our listeners are going to know that I'm just about to going to love on what you just said there, because one of the main tools that we use is the power pause. When we feel the feels, we take a power pause. So thank you. That's a beautiful finishing moment and a beautiful reminder. And all I could hear was, and it might be because you're British, a spoonful of stress out of the bucket. I was like, I wish you would like sing it in the Mary Poppins voice right now so bad, but not to undermine what you were saying, but you're so right, is that we have these, again, we're like, well, what is this 842 step strategy for me to do to regulate my nervous system? And I'm going to be a really healthy person from here on out. No, that's tightly wound version of ourselves, right? And so that witnessing and that honoring and that tending, it's a moment to moment thing, friends. This is not like a one and done solution by any means, and neither is life, and neither are you, right? And so I just really love that you share that in a really, and you shared it in such a beautiful and gentle, compassionate way. So thank you so much for everything, Jenny, and lovely to have you on here. And please, please connect with Jenny. Everything that you heard from her is going to be in the show notes and the description, her socials, her the link to the workshop. And when you're listening to this episode, make sure to take a screenshot and tag us with your takeaways, because we want to witness you. And that's a huge part of regulation, is community and connection. So we want to witness you in your celebration, your recognition, and your learning and your growth. So thank you so much, everybody, for being part of this beautiful community and part of this Movement, Mind, and Meaning podcast, where we use these different tools and shifts in perspectives and connection to continually grow and evolve like the beautiful, constantly evolving flower of humanity and beingness that you are. So thank you so much, everybody. Sending you so much love and aloha, and we will see you all and hear you all. I guess you'll hear us on the next episode. Thank you so much. Take good care. Bye-bye.